My name is David Anthony, and I'm in the history department. I teach African American history, I teach African history, and I teach a class on African cinema. So much of my teacher training came in two different ways. It came through emulating those people who really made an impression on me, the good teachers that I had at different points in my life. And then it came through the practical experience of teaching as a teaching assistant when I started at University of Wisconsin when I was in graduate school, and then actually learning in the trenches when I started teaching. And my first job was at a historically black college called, at that time, Coppin State College. Now it's known as Coppin State University in Baltimore. And I was teaching every day, and I had to sink or swim. I actually had a very interesting experience where one of the students, who was older than I, took me aside one day and actually spoke as a representative of other people in the class. And she said, "We realize that you are learning your craft, but we want you to realize that you are learning at our expense." That was very sobering. So I would say that teaching has been a combination of what I've learned from other people by seeing, and then integrating into my own practice the kinds of things that I have found interesting and the ways that I would like to be taught. Well, I think mentoring is absolutely critical and crucial. I was mentored in both formal and informal ways at different points in my life. And I've been very, very fortunate. Teachers have appeared at certain points like angels in my life. And sometimes that relationship comes in a surprising way. I had a very close relationship with a fellow graduate student who was senior to me, who introduced himself by saying, basically, "I'm going to be your big brother, and I'm going to help get the people that you're studying from here respect you. And in order to do that, what I want to do is give something to you that was given to me. And I don't want anything from you. I just want you to do this for someone else when you have the opportunity." And that's always been very, very important to me. Mentoring can operate on several different levels. I think instructors and students often have the potential for mentoring to take shape. Younger or junior and more senior professors, I think, also should be engaged in that process. But it really does also have to be something that each party is willing to be part of. So it tends to happen one of two ways. It tends to happen when the senior person takes it upon himself or herself to offer himself or herself. And then it tends to happen when the junior person looks for support, looks for help, and asks for it. I think one of the problems is that younger faculty, junior faculty, don't always know what to ask for or how to ask for it, which is, I think, true in almost any situation. It's very difficult to give yourself permission to ask for help, even when you need it, because you don't necessarily think that it's safe. You don't necessarily think that someone else will take you seriously. There are all kinds of things that one has to overcome, blocks and self-consciousness. But I have tried, as I've moved on in my life, I recognize I will always need some help from somebody else, and I will always be able to give help to somebody else. And I try to just leave the channels of communication open for that, both giving it and receiving it. Skyping has been very, very helpful. because students have the opportunity in a Skyping situation to talk directly to people that they are reading, or at least supposed to be reading, and that helps encourage them. But I think it also demystifies the intellectual process. It makes it also clear that, we're very ordinary people who are trying to do sometimes extraordinary things, but we're doing them just as folks. And we're all interested to engage, to communicate, to have contact. And I think that's been very, very helpful for students. It creates a certain sense of engagement with students. So they understand that your voice is not the only voice that they hear. And in fact, often what will happen is that these other voices will reinforce points that you try to make. So that's exciting. And I like that kind of excitement. I like to be able to generate some kind of sparks in a classroom. I want people to stay awake, to pay attention, and to participate. Well, I'm constantly calibrating. I'm constantly taking the temperature of the room. Classroom situations, regardless of how long you have been in the classroom and in what kinds of institutions you've taught, every time you walk into that classroom, it's a new ball game. A new quarter, a new term, even a class that you've taught many times, you can't rest on your laurels. You can't assume that the ways that you did it in the past will necessarily apply to the circumstances that present themselves in the present. So I try to be attentive. And I have to also understand that, some things that I think or I would like to work may not actually be working in quite the same way as I had hoped. And then I've got to figure out how to give myself permission to change, to try something else. One barrier is the cost, the constantly rising cost to attend this and other universities. That makes it very, very difficult. It makes it harder for people to finish. It makes it sometimes necessary for them to interrupt their educations. But I think it's also a matter of understanding, particularly those of us in this environment who are on the quarter system, that you really don't have a lot of time. You really have to hit the ground running. And it is your time, but you have to claim it. You have to take advantage of it. Another thing is the problem of connecting, not connecting. It's really important to forge connections, to be known by a few people before you leave this place. Because you're asking people when you leave to write letters on your behalf that can in fact influence the rest of your life. And I think that it's being shy, self-conscious, or just putting things off that also represents a barrier. This is yours, and for it to be your education, you've got to take it. You've got to claim it. The most satisfying thing about teaching, I think, is when you really feel that we, as a group, as a cohort, all the people who are sharing the space in a particular class are moving along together. That I'm not just dragging people, and I'm also not being held back. And that kind of collective movement, that kind of teamwork is really, really special.